If you drive anywhere in the United States, February 2026 could quietly become one of the most expensive months of your life. Not because of gas prices, not because of car payments, but because a set of new driving laws is about to flip the rules of the road in a way most drivers still don't see coming. These changes weren't debated loudly. They weren't rolled out with warnings on nightly news. They moved fast, behind closed doors, and they were designed to do one thing extremely well: catch violations at scale. Technology will be doing the watching, systems will be doing the calculating, and the penalties won't be small. Starting in February 2026, 5 new rules will begin taking money directly out of drivers' pockets, often without a police officer ever pulling you over. Hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. In some cases, compounding penalties that don't stop until you comply. What makes this moment dangerous isn't just the rules themselves. It's how suddenly they're being enforced, how quietly they were finalized, and how unprepared most drivers are right now. Because by the time many people realize what changed, the fines will already be active, the notices already sent, and the damage already done. What also makes February 2026 different from past regulatory changes is how enforcement itself has evolved. For decades, traffic laws relied heavily on human intervention. An officer had to observe a violation, make a judgment call, and initiate a stop. That process naturally limited how many violations could be enforced. These new rules remove that limitation almost entirely. Enforcement is no longer bound by manpower or visibility. It's built into infrastructure. Cameras, sensors, databases, and automated verification systems will now handle tasks that once required discretion. That shift changes everything. A brief insurance lapse that might have gone unnoticed for days now triggers an automatic fine. Slowing down only when you see a camera no longer works when your average speed is being calculated over miles. A glance at a phone that once depended on an officer's observation can now be detected by fixed systems that never blink. The first rule takes aim at something most drivers never think about, even though it's already inside their vehicle. Beginning in February 2026, mandatory event data recorder compliance becomes a fully enforceable requirement. If your vehicle was manufactured after 2018, it is expected to have an event data recorder, often called an EDR, in verified working condition. This device is not optional, and it's no longer treated as background technology. It becomes an inspection item. If the system is malfunctioning, disconnected, or shows signs of tampering, the penalty is immediate. The base fine starts at $750, and that's before any secondary consequences are considered. What makes this rule especially powerful is how it connects enforcement agencies and insurance companies. Event data recorders capture precise information about how a vehicle was operating just before an incident, including speed, braking, and throttle input. Starting in February 2026, insurers are granted expanded access to this data during claims and investigations. For drivers who haven't checked whether their vehicle's system is functioning properly, this rule creates an invisible risk. You won't know there's a problem until an inspection, a claim, or a roadside check triggers it. And by then, the fine is already attached. The second rule is the one transportation officials expect to generate the highest volume of penalties in the shortest amount of time. Real-time insurance verification becomes fully active nationwide in February 2026, and it fundamentally changes how coverage is enforced. The familiar ritual of handing over an insurance card during a traffic stop is effectively obsolete. A national verification database now connects law enforcement systems, toll infrastructure, and automated license plate readers in real time. Every scan checks your coverage instantly. If your policy has lapsed, even for a single day, the system flags it automatically. There is no warning period built into this process. The first offense triggers a $1,000 fine. A second offense escalates to $2,500 and includes mandatory license suspension. What makes this rule especially dangerous is how common short lapses actually are. Missed payments, billing errors, or delays when switching providers are more frequent than most drivers realize. In the past, those gaps might have gone unnoticed unless an officer asked for proof at the wrong moment. Now, the system is always checking. It doesn't care why the lapse happened, it only verifies whether coverage exists at that exact moment. And once a violation is reported, reversing it becomes extremely difficult. This is where many drivers will get caught off guard, not because they chose to drive uninsured, but because they assumed a brief gap wouldn't matter. Cell phone detection technology becomes fully enforceable in February 2026, and it doesn't work the way people assume. These aren't just red light cameras with better lenses. They're advanced systems installed at major intersections and along busy corridors that analyze hand position, device placement, and screen illumination inside moving vehicles. They can tell the difference between a phone resting in a cup holder and a phone being actively used. They can detect the posture associated with texting, scrolling, or holding a device near eye level, and they operate continuously. There is no officer discretion involved. The first violation carries a $500 fine, the second jumps to $1,000 and includes a mandatory distracted driving course. The third triggers a 90-day license suspension. By the end of the rollout, more than 300 metropolitan areas will have these systems active, with expansion planned beyond that. Many drivers don't consider quick glances to be violations. Many assume enforcement only happens when an officer witnesses it directly. That assumption no longer holds. These systems don't issue warnings, they issue notices. And once a violation is recorded, contesting it becomes difficult because the evidence is visual, time-stamped, and automatically logged. For drivers who rely on muscle memory more than intention, this rule alone could generate multiple penalties in a short period of time. It's not about whether you think you are being careful. It's about whether the system detected behavior it's programmed to flag. The fourth rule changes something drivers have relied on for decades without even realizing it. Average speed monitoring zones expand across federal highways and major corridors. Instead of measuring how fast you are going at one point, cameras now record your entry time and exit time between two locations. Your average speed across that entire stretch is calculated automatically. If it exceeds the posted limit, a violation is generated. Slowing down when you see a camera no longer protects you. The entire distance is monitored. This rule catches drivers who maintain speeds just slightly above the limit for extended periods, not just those who spike their speed briefly. Violations start at $300 and escalate to $800 when the average exceeds the limit by more than 15 miles per hour. What makes this especially effective from an enforcement standpoint is that it removes the gamesmanship drivers have learned over years of traditional speed traps. There's no guessing where the camera is. There's no timing a slowdown. The system only cares about the math. And because the calculation happens after the fact, drivers often don't realize they've violated the rule until the notice arrives. The fifth rule completes the enforcement picture, and it's the one with the most severe long-term financial consequences. Beginning in February 2026, emissions compliance is no longer limited to scheduled inspections or repair shop visits. New roadside emissions sensors will begin operating passively, meaning they can detect non-compliant vehicles as they drive past without ever stopping. These systems analyze exhaust output in real time and compare it against federal standards. If a vehicle fails, a violation notice is automatically generated and mailed to the registered owner within 72 hours. The initial fine starts at $400, but that's only the beginning. Once flagged, the vehicle enters a compliance window. Repairs must be completed and verified within 30 days. Miss that deadline and daily penalties of $50 begin accumulating. These penalties don't pause. They don't reset. After 90 days, registration suspension becomes automatic. That means the vehicle is no longer legally drivable, even if everything else is in order. What makes this rule especially costly is that many drivers won't know they're out of compliance until the notice arrives. Older vehicles, modified exhaust systems, and deferred maintenance all increase risk. Repairs to bring a vehicle back into compliance can easily exceed $2,000, especially when emission systems are involved. This turns what used to be an occasional inconvenience into an ongoing financial threat. The longer a driver delays action, the more expensive the situation becomes. The only real choice drivers have left is whether they enter this new era prepared or whether they learn about it the hard way through penalties that arrive without warning and don't disappear once they do. In response to these changes, consumer advocacy groups and transportation attorneys have been unusually direct. They've warned that these 5 rules are structured to catch people who wait. Not reckless drivers necessarily, but busy drivers, stressed drivers, drivers who assume they'll deal with it later. Because later is exactly when the penalties begin to multiply. A missed repair deadline turns into daily fines. A suspended registration turns into insurance complications. An insurance lapse turns into license suspension. Each step narrows options and raises costs. February 2026 isn't just a date on a calendar, it's a dividing line. On one side are drivers who adjust early and absorb minimal cost. On the other are drivers who continue as usual until notices start arriving. Because once enforcement begins, the system won't ask whether you knew. It will only check whether you complied. Accountability enables enforcement, and enforcement, when automated, produces financial consequences quickly and consistently. Drivers who verify compliance now will likely remember this period as a close call they navigated successfully. Drivers who ignore it may remember it as the moment driving became unexpectedly expensive. The difference between those outcomes isn't luck, it's awareness. The rules are written, the systems are live, the penalties are defined. What remains undecided is how prepared drivers will be when enforcement accelerates. Because once February 2026 arrives, there will be no ambiguity about what changed. The only question will be whether you adjusted in time or whether you're learning about these rules the first time through a violation notice.
Been warned.